You are listening to the Keep the Weight Off podcast with Dr. Angela, episode number 47.
Welcome to the Keep the Weight Off podcast, where we bust all the dieting myths and discover not just how to lose weight, but more importantly, how to keep it off. We go way beyond the food, and we use science and psychology to give you strategies that work. And now your host, Dr. Angela Zechmann.
Hey, welcome to the podcast, everyone. It is December 22nd. And for those of us who celebrate Christmas, there are only a few days left. How are you doing, Marchelle?
I'd have to say I'm a little stressed.
This is always a kind of a crazy time, isn't it? Now, I don't want to assume...
last minute to do anything.
Yeah. So. Well, we don't want to assume that everybody who's listening to the podcast celebrates Christmas, because not everybody does. But it is kind of a crazy time for those of us who do celebrate Christmas. So I was thinking, I'm imagining if you're listening to this podcast, hopefully you're doing something fun while you're listening, right? Perhaps you're driving to get some shopping done, or perhaps you're taking a jog, or perhaps you're wrapping gifts. Or I always like to imagine, the fun things that people are doing while they're listening to the podcast. Maybe it's more like task oriented, like folding laundry or doing dishes or something like that, or maybe decorating. I don't know. I just think it's fun to imagine all of our listeners out there in podcast land listening to us. And it's interesting because I've always loved the holidays, always, but I also realize they can be really difficult too. We can put a lot of stress on ourselves, and especially those of you podcast listeners who are women. We tend to put a lot of stress on ourselves to make everything perfect for everyone. I know I am very, very guilty of that. When my kids were little, I always wanted to have the holiday decorations up. I wanted to get the perfect gifts. I wanted to make the perfect holiday meal. I just wanted everything to be perfect. Like I was the Christmas perfectionist. It was fun, but really, it was pretty stressful. And, sometimes it could become this big production. It would take me a few days to recover from it afterwards. Were you a holiday perfectionist when you had little kids?
No, I'm kind of a Grinch when it comes to Christmas, like decorating and stuff. Because so I have a mother that really, really goes over the top for the holidays. And she, and like you said, everything is perfect. And we have all these holiday traditions. So I've sort of always just followed suit and just done her Christmas thing. And I didn't really ever do anything on my own. And whenever I decided, I wanted to, when I grew up and I had kids, whenever I was like decorating or having to do it, or like the holidays would come around and I'd start just feeling the pressure of like having to go get the tree and decorating, all I would be thinking is, it's going to be so much work to take all this down. And so I'm kind of a Grinch when it comes to Christmas decorating and all of, the fuss. I always do all my shopping on Christmas Eve.
Oh, do you?
Yep.
Oh, good for you.
It makes it a lot more fun and a lot more stressful.
That's funny. Well, in my experience, the holidays are a little bit like a magnifying glass. So everything that you are dealing with typically becomes heightened at the holiday season. So, for example, if you're dealing with grief or loss, it can be magnified during the holidays. Or if you're dealing with loneliness, it can be magnified. And then, of course, there's magnification of food. Food temptations everywhere, and alcohol is everywhere. So today, I wanted to talk about some of the common triggers that come up for people as they're trying to navigate their way through the holidays. So the first thing I want to talk about is, like the holiday food pushers. Those people who offer you a food treat and really seem to enjoy watching you eat it, right? And you just kind of feel guilty for saying no to them. it can be something that's really difficult to handle. It's interesting because I was just texting with my sister and she's like, I was going to send you some of our gingerbread cookies. And I thought, you're probably not going to eat them. So it's interesting. So I have an interesting way to reframe this, right? What if they're not actually food pushers per se? What if they're just people who want to see you happy and you've trained them that food makes you happy? Have you ever thought about it like that?
I don't really know. I don't know because I'm not really sure what. I mean, like my husband's grandmother and my mother and a lot of the women in my family, like during the holiday season, they make like 5 kinds of fudge and 30 different kinds of cookies and all of the, I mean, they work so hard and spend so much time doing it. And I have really no idea why they do it. Maybe it's because traditional. I don't know.
It's their way of making people happy. It's their way. It's love. Remember, these foods give people dopamine hits and they make you happy. So, and then, if you've been indulging over the years and thanking them for it and all of that, well, of course they're going to repeat the behavior like you trained them, right?
So, I mean, and that's just become tradition too, because like the holiday, the sugar cookies, the frosted cookies that you make with all the cutout cookies, and you do it with the kids, and it's just a thing, and it makes the holidays special. Or the gingerbread houses, we used to make those. All the candy and everything on them. So it's hard to sometimes break those traditions because it takes, that memory out of the holidays.
Well, I'm not going to suggest that we necessarily need to break the traditions. Here's what I just want to help our listeners reframe this. Because I don't think that they're necessarily food pushers per se. They're people who want to bring joy, and they know that it's a tradition, and they know that it's a joyful tradition. But let's say that we decided that we wanted to train them differently. Let's say we wanted to train them that candles make us happy, then they'd be giving us candles, right? Does that make sense?
Great idea. Yes, I love candles.
So that's what I want to suggest. So if you're listening to this before any holiday gathering, you could have a conversation with the people that you've considered to be food pushers. You could have a conversation with them in advance and let them know that you've discovered that holiday treats are actually making you sick and you want to avoid them this year. So you'll be politely declining those kinds of treats. That doesn't mean that you don't love them or anything like that. It just means that you're trying to protect your physical body from harm, right? It can feel challenging to make your wishes known in advance like this, but in my experience, people really appreciate your candor. I've had people say things to me like, well, I don't eat blah, 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 or, here's my expectations for how this is going to go. And I actually really appreciate it when people do that. And so imagine that the other person is going to appreciate your letting them know authentically what's true for you. So
I guess I was just like thinking about this, and I feel like, well, I guess especially before I started working with you, the last 10 years before that, I'm pretty sure that the rest of my family is unaware of this, but I don't think that we were aware of the harm that eating all this sugar would do to us. You know what I mean? So it just wasn't even thought about. It was just like, wow, look at the beautiful fudge that I made and the beautiful cookies and we would eat them. And there was no thought of like negativity to that. Like, hey, I'll eat them. And the kids would eat them. And then we'd have, our stockings, full of candy and like I said, the gingerbread houses. And there was no thought behind, like the damage that eating all of this stuff could do to your health. And now that I've become aware of this, I've like such a different outlook on it. But I don't think the rest of my family does, because
not yet.
They don't work with you. And they don't work with you, so they don't know all of this stuff.
Yeah.
So they're still stuck in, the way of thinking of, all of these beautiful things they make. And like you said, it's out of love. So I think just getting, and it's hard because how do I tell my, my grandmother or my mom, hey, don't make that stuff anymore because it's toxic and it's going to kill you. Or it's going to give you diabetes. That's a hard conversation to have with somebody.
It can be hard. Yeah. So, imagine we used to give, like when I was a kid, and I'm going to really date myself. This is before we knew how harmful cigarettes were. We would give our aunts and uncles, we would make ceramic ashtrays in Girl Scouts, and then we would give our aunts and uncles ashtrays for Christmas. Everybody smoked.
Totally made ashtrays for my family when I was a kid too.
Yeah. And you would give people cigarettes for Christmas. A carton of cigarettes was a really nice Christmas gift for somebody who was a smoker. Yeah. Right. And this was even before all the cigarette taxes, and now they're like crazy expensive. So
right.
I mean, basically what's going on right now is we are in the infancy of our understanding of what this stuff does to us. In the same way that in the 60s and early 70s, we were in our infancy of our understanding about what tobacco products do to our health. So if you're someone who is trying to explain to your family members how dangerous this stuff is, imagine how it would have felt for somebody who had discovered how toxic cigarettes were back in the 60s and early 70s. So
right. I've seen ads like in the 50s where like pregnant women were smoking. It's like it's not a big deal.
Yeah.
And
so exactly.
I totally understand what you're saying about we just need to get the awareness out.
Yeah, and it will happen. It will happen, but it's just taking some time. And we have we've got the sugar industry that's completely against us, and they're using the holidays as a way of pushing us to eat more sugar as well. So just be aware. I really think that the most important thing is that we are not standing in judgment of people who are wanting us to have treats. There are some people who are food pushers, but I'm not sure that they're the majority of people. I think the majority of people are just following traditions and they want other people to be happy.
Definitely.
So it can really help to reduce a lot of stress for you if you just try to think of these people who, like you, just want everyone to be happy around the holidays. And you say, no, thank you. Right? No, thank you. It's a complete sentence. Just no, thank you. So I hope that helps with what we would have considered to be food pushers. The next thing that I want to address as a trigger is difficult emotions. So the holidays can bring a lot of memories. Perhaps you suffered abuse as a child and the holidays are hard. Or perhaps you're grieving the loss of a loved one. Or perhaps there's been a recent divorce. Or perhaps you're just feeling lonely. None of these emotions feel good at all. And then you see these commercials on TV and you hear all of these, wonderful stories of people having so much togetherness and joy and love at the holidays. And the holidays just really highlight and magnify the difficult feelings that you have. And this can cause you to feel sorry for yourself and eat to comfort yourself. So I just want to address this because I have had some difficult holidays in the past, and it can be really hard. And I think last year was really hard for a lot of people too. I spent the entire holiday completely alone last year because of COVID. Like I was not going to be getting together with people. I just said no, none of it. I'm going to be by myself, and it was hard. So I want to teach you what to do if you do have some struggles with some difficult emotions over the holidays. Because first of all, I want you to know you're not alone. Okay. So I'm going to teach you what I teach our students in the Journey Beyond Weight Loss membership, which is all about self-compassion. So the first thing you do, there's 3 steps to self-compassion. The first thing is you just become present with yourself. So if you can, I want you to imagine that your spirit is coming out of your body and you're watching yourself. And you're observing yourself from a witness position. This takes a shift in perspective. Can you understand what I mean by that, Marchelle? Do you get that? Like, yes, you're shifting your perspective.
Sure I would like what I see.
Well, you just ask yourself, what emotion is this that I'm feeling? And you ask yourself, what are the physical sensations that I'm feeling? So you describe the physical sensations that you're feeling. Maybe there's like a empty feeling in your chest, or maybe your heart's beating a little bit fast, or maybe, you're feeling something in the pit of your stomach. So ask yourself, what are the physical feelings? And then see if you can name the emotion that you're feeling. Just, maybe it's sadness. Maybe it's disappointment. Maybe it's loneliness. Maybe it's jealousy. Maybe it's anger. Maybe it's grief. Just naming the emotion can be really, really comforting. And the reason that is because when you're naming the emotion, you're using a different part of your brain to name the emotion than the part of your brain that's actually feeling and generating the emotion. So it helps you to not be so identified with it. Does that make sense?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does.
The second piece of self-compassion is to remind yourself that all people suffer. So remind yourself that you're not alone in your suffering. And the question I always like to ask myself is, I wonder how many other people in the world are feeling like this right now. It can be so comforting to know that you're not alone, that negative emotion is part of the human experience, and that other people are feeling that emotion as well. When we feel badly, we have this tendency to want to isolate. But what can actually serve us really well is to reach out for connection. So call a friend, or have a heart-to-heart talk with a family member. Talk to them about how much you miss your father, for example, or how the holidays seem to bring out feelings of loneliness. Don't worry about being a Debbie Downer. You're not asking them to fix you, because you don't need to be fixed. You're just reaching out for connection. Okay? So when you're feeling a negative emotion, there's nothing wrong with you and you don't need to be fixed. Okay? Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, good. Good. The last piece of self-compassion is kindness. You want to be very, very kind and gentle with yourself. You want to treat yourself the way that you treat your own best friend, because you are your own best friend, whether you realize it or not. So kindness, 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 kindness to self. Honey, I'm so sorry you're feeling like this. Honey, everything's going to be okay. We'll get through this. You just talk to yourself and you sort of parent yourself. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Those are the 3 steps. So just a little review. So the 3 steps of self-compassion, if you notice that you're feeling a negative emotion, the first thing is to go into the witness position and observe yourself and name the emotion that you're feeling. The second step is to remind yourself that all people suffer and that there's nothing wrong with you, and that other people suffer as well, and reach out for a connection with another person or other people. And then the last piece of it is kindness, being super, super kind and gentle with yourself and being your own best friend. So that is how to manage negative emotions without eating your way through them. Okay. Now, you might still end up wanting to go eat something. And if you have a slip, it's okay. Do not worry about it. But I just want us all to remember that there are lots and lots of images in the media of people who are having all these perfect holiday celebrations, and they really just set us up to think that if our holiday doesn't look like those people, then something is wrong. But it's not. It's not wrong. Nothing has to be perfect. Your holiday can be perfectly imperfect and be wonderful. So I would encourage all of our listeners to just relax a little bit and take it easy and remember that perfection isn't necessary.
I think that's such good advice, because I know that social media and, all those kind of magazines and all that, they really portray this picture of this perfect, or what everybody should have. And none of it's real.
Yeah.
And I haven't seen a single person that actually has a Christmas or a holiday or gets through a holiday that looks like the holiday that's in, the Martha Stewart magazine. And I certainly haven't. And that's what, it is really important for people to know, like, whatever you're doing is okay.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have to look like somebody else's. And sometimes, I've had a lot harder holidays than others. Some of them have been perfectly magical and easy, and others have been really, really hard because of, grief and loss. And I've just had to get through it in different ways.
Yeah.
And try. Sometimes I've ate through some of it, and sometimes I haven't. It's,
Yeah.
We all try to do our best. And
exactly.
My biggest trigger is just the temptation, just because it's not typically there, all the time. And during the holidays, it's
special holiday
right
foods.
There. Yeah, it's right in front of you. So it's just the temptations that I have to deal with. I don't go out and seek it myself. Typically, it's, I just, run across it, like at a holiday party, or at, somebody brings you a basket. And so that's hard. But
yeah. Well, what I would recommend that you do is to think about, just make choices in advance to the best of your ability. When it comes to food, just make choices in advance. So if you know that there's going to be a special dessert or special holiday treat, maybe it's your grandmother's fudge or whatever it might be, as long as you don't have a brain that's crazy triggered with sugar like mine, plan to have a little treat. Plan to have a little something. If you do have a brain that's crazy triggered like mine, then you have to think about that. like if I were to eat my mother's Russian tea cakes, I would go absolutely nuts probably. So I would have to plan, okay, I'm going to have one and then I'm done and no more. And I would have to kind of like rehearse that in my head. And then I would plan to have cravings for this stuff for the next 3 or 4 days, maybe longer, because those are just huge trigger foods for me. So, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. I want to also talk about some of these expectations that we have about other people. I got into trouble with this one year because I was trying to manage everybody else's feelings around the holidays. And
I was trying to do that.
I was trying to make sure that everybody else was having the perfect Christmas, And what I want us to remember is that everyone else is having all of their own thoughts and feelings about the holidays and what it means. And you don't want to get involved in their experience. And the reason is because what they're going to experience is completely dependent on what it is that they're thinking. And you have absolutely no control over what anybody else thinks. Isn't that interesting? All you have control over is what you're thinking. So this is a powerful understanding, and it works not just at the holidays, but at any time. Because if you try to control what other people think, you're messing around in something that's not your business, really. Okay? You have no control over what anybody else thinks, which means, and because our thoughts drive our feelings, you have no control over how anybody else feels either. Okay? So keep all of this in mind as you're moving through the holidays. They're going to think what they want to think, and they're going to feel however it is that they feel. And none of that is really any of your business. So if you think about it like this, it might make sense to sit down with a piece of paper and choose your thoughts in advance. Okay? Figure out how you want to feel about the holiday and choose thoughts that will allow you to feel that way. So for example, if you want to feel love at the holiday, what thoughts would allow you to feel love? Just think about that. If you want to feel
this is
joyful, yeah. If you want to feel joyful, what thoughts are going to allow you to feel joyful? And don't worry about anybody else. Let them pick their thoughts. Most people aren't going to consciously do this. They're just going to think whatever they think and feel however they feel. They're not conscious about it at all. But if you want to be conscious about it, you choose the thoughts. Choose first the feeling that you want to feel, and then ask yourself, what thoughts will allow me to feel that feeling? Okay? So
this
that
is
will
a hard one for me because also, during the holidays, I do a lot of charity work or, volunteering or.
Oh, good for you.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, I guess I just grew up doing that and then, and got involved in a community that did it. Also, I worked with other doctors that we would all get together, and doctors and nurses and medical assistants, we would all get together and, put stuff together for a certain organization. So, or helping the less fortunate, because, we do that during the holiday season. We become, more generous. And, but that also comes with like this feeling of, trying to fix other people, or make them happy. Like, for instance, I have some next door neighbors and they're struggling and, they have 3 little kids and I want to just fix it. I want them to be okay. So I want to, and so then I start focusing on them and how I'm going to, make everything better, and I'm going to get the kids the gifts and I get distracted. So it's kind of, that's a hard one for me, just because, feeling like you want to help other people out during the holiday season, because we're supposed to be generous. It could take the direction of, trying to like manage other people's feelings around you, or if like any of my family members are having a hard time, through the holidays, and I want to, want them to be happy. So I want to fix that. And, and then it, and that, can lead to a whole lot of extra unnecessary stress and, probably some emotional eating. And so this is a good one. This is something to think about.
Yeah. So if you want to be generous, if you want to feel generous at the holidays, then you can be generous, but just don't try to manage their reactions or their thoughts about it. Make sense?
Yeah.
You do it for you. You do it for you. And then however they respond, now in all likelihood, they're going to be very appreciative, but they might not. So, but you do what you do you, so that you can have a feeling of generosity, and then let them be them. That's the best way to live,
Right.
Yeah. So I have a couple of other pieces of advice. And the first one is to just make sure that you follow your normal routines as much as possible. This can be really sort of challenging if you're entertaining house guests or if you're a guest in someone else's home. But do the best you can to get the sleep that you need. That is huge. Sleep. Make sure you're eating regular meals. Don't be skipping any meals. Drink plenty of water. It's easy to blow off your routines when you're traveling, but do the best you can to stay consistent, because the more consistent you are with your routines, the more empowered you're going to feel and the more control you'll have over your thoughts, and the better you're going to feel. And then my last piece of advice is around alcohol, and it's not really going to be any different than my usual advice around alcohol, which is to decide ahead of time. Okay. Alcohol can turn off your prefrontal cortex. Remember, that's the part of your brain that knows about your future. So then your caveman brain is going to be in charge, or your primitive brain, and you're just going to keep drinking. Or you're going to be, what happens for me is if I have more than about 2 glasses of wine, I'll start eating way more than I ever planned to. So my recommendation is to just plan it ahead of time. Okay. So I always, plan to just have a little bit. You can do you, however you want to do you. My only suggestion is that you do it consciously. So thinking about who you are becoming. Okay. So Marchelle, did you have any other comments at all?
No, it's a lot of really great stuff to think about. Just
it is
a different perspective on.
Yeah.
But see, I'm learning all this stuff, but the rest of my family's not. So it's just.
But you know what? They don't have to, because you don't have to manage them.
No, I don't have to manage them, but I do have to be around them.
Yeah.
So I'm just like here in my head trying to think, how am I going to have these conversations? Like, because now is going to be the time to do it. Before, all of the platters of cookies start coming my way, and and all the stress. I don't know. I just think like the holidays have become more stressful for me than anything else. Yeah. Like you said, trying to make everything perfect and getting the perfect gifts for people, or just the pressure to perform, or you have to, you are around a lot more people than usual, going to parties, doing that kind of stuff. And so it's turned into mainly just a stressor. And I've always just covered that up with, the eating and the drinking. So a lot of good stuff to think about. So I'm going to write in my journal ahead of time.
Yeah.
I'm going to make a plan.
Make a plan.
Consistent. Yeah.
Yeah.
And maybe things will be different this year.
Exactly. All right. Awesome. Well, that's all for today. So for all of our podcast listeners, I hope you have a wonderful holiday, whichever holiday you might be celebrating this season. And next week, we will see you back with some tips on setting goals for the new year. So we will talk to you then. Have a great holiday, everybody. Take care. Bye.
Hey, if you really want to lose weight and keep it off for good, your next step is to sign up for Dr. Angela's free weight loss course, where you're going to learn everything you need to get started on your weight loss journey the right way. Just head over to journeybeyondweightloss.com/free course to sign up. Also, it would be awesome if you could take a few moments and write a review on iTunes. Thanks, and we'll see you in Journey Beyond Weight Loss.